Other than number one Oregon, former Pac-12 teams now in the Big Ten are not built for Big Ten play. They have a lot of work to do, especially the USC Trojans. I'll explain. Locked on Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked on Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked on Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, coming up on 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer, and I want to thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, the Pac-12 remnants in the Big Ten struggling for the most part, again, except Oregon. 7-0 Indiana without its starting quarterback this week. He's injured. Plus, we have Tuesday tweets. You want to hang around for all of that. Clearly, the Oregon Ducks have figured things out. Many, including us here at Locked On Big Ten, have had them pegged for a spot in the Big Ten championship game since the spring. And now the nation has noticed, and the Ducks are ranked number one in the country. And as much as Dan Lanning and the Ducks would like to make a statement and win the Big Ten in their first year and say, hello, we're here, honestly, they have bigger fish to fry as well. They are a bona fide contender for a national championship. And honestly, Oregon would have been content to remain in the old Pac-12 had it not blown up. It would have provided an easier path to the playoffs year in and year out. But right now, the team is so good. Doesn't matter what conference they're in. They could play anytime, anywhere against anybody. But when USC and UCLA bolted for the Big Ten, Oregon and Washington had no choice but to follow them there. And outside of Oregon, the other former Pac-12 schools were not ready for what the Big Ten was going to throw at them. We talked about this being a possibility here. It's coming to fruition before our very eyes. Let's start with Lincoln Riley and the USC Trojans. You know, not too long ago, the Trojans, they paid no attention to defense whatsoever. They would simply just outscore their opponents 45-35 back in the days of Caleb Williams, back when he was good, the Heisman Trophy year. Many, including us, said that they would not score like that against Big Ten defenses. Oh, and they better bring a defense of their own or they would struggle. And people said that that they would not be tough enough to play in the Big Ten. They would not be tough enough to thrive in the Big Ten. Yeah, that's how it's happening. That's what's going on. First of all, after what everybody thought was an impressive season opening win against LSU, USC's scoring has been down compared to last year. Look at the numbers. Down. Turns out Big Ten defenses are pretty good. Even the Big Ten second-tier teams bring good defenses every Saturday. You've got to be ready for it. And the USC defense, which was supposed to be much improved, really isn't. Since entering Big Ten play, the Trojans have lost 4 of their 5 games. And in each game, they actually had a late lead, or at least were tied. And then their defense gave up a winning score to the other team in the final minute. Time and time again. It is cookie cutter formula USC Trojan football right now. You can set your watch by it. They had Michigan beat. Until they didn't. Michigan's offense, which hadn't done anything all day, finally decided to just punch USC in the mouth and drove down the field for a game-winning touchdown. It was a toughness issue. At Minnesota, a former FCS quarterback leading the Gophers marched down the field for a winning touchdown drive with a minute to go in a tie game. At home against Penn State, the Trojans blew a double-digit lead and the Nittany Lions forced overtime and won the game. Saturday at Maryland, instead of going up by 2 scores and kicking that field goal with 2 minutes to go, the kick was blocked. Maryland recovered, drove the ball, winning score. Do you see a pattern here? Every single week. So much so that the B word is floating around Southern California. Buyout. Lincoln Riley's contract. Should he be fired? Well, the buyout there would be in the $60 to $80 million range. It's a lot of money, but lately schools have been confident enough to make big changes. What about UCLA, for example? And by the way, we don't ever promote coaches getting fired here on Lockdown Big Ten. I don't believe in it. But if things are happening and stories are out there, we're going to talk about them. What about UCLA? Their inaugural season in the Big Ten has been nothing short of a dumpster fire. They got their first conference win finally this past weekend on the road at Rutgers. It was the first time the Bruins had topped 20 points all season long, and it's almost November. They got Nebraska, and they got Iowa, and they got Washington queued on the schedule. We'll see what happens there. Speaking of Washington, what about Washington? I don't want to pile on them too much exactly with this theme that we have going here today. After all, they were in the national championship game just 10 months ago. Their coach got hired away, and it's a complete rebuild with 20 of the 22 starters being replaced this year. But they certainly had to hit the reset button. And to say that they weren't ready for the Big Ten would be a bit unfair. I mean, it was a hardcore transition from being a championship caliber team to this year, but they're struggling so far as well in conference play. They completely shot themselves in the foot, literally. Their kicker just cost them a win at Rutgers. They lost that game. They did beat Michigan in a rematch of the national championship against a team that's very similar to themselves with a new coach and a revamped lineup. And I'm wondering each day how impressive that home win really was, because Michigan just seems to be looking worse and worse, to be honest with you. And then Iowa embarrassed them last week. So up next for the Huskies is a road game at 7-0 Indiana. It's going to be a tough one. And in 2 weeks, they have a game at Penn State. Going to be a tough one. I don't know if they're built for those games. Good news, bad news for the Huskies is they have some of those struggling former Pac-12 teams on their schedule coming up. There's 2 home games against USC and UCLA. Those are winnable games. The bad news is they close out the season at number 1 Oregon, the other Pac-12 team, which, as we've stated for the record, is pretty darn good at number 1. Other traditional Pac-12 teams are struggling around the country as well that went to other conferences. Arizona State is 2-2 in Big 12 play. Arizona is 1-3 in Big 12 play. Stanford and Cal are a combined 1-7 in ACC play. The truth is, the conference wasn't that good. And the teams aren't doing too well elsewhere either. So we talked about it. A lot of people would push back and fire back when we were saying, hey, maybe some Pac-12 teams might struggle in the Big Ten. Well, here we are, beyond the halfway point. They're struggling, with the exception of one, who's just a shining beacon on a hill there with number 1 Oregon. So I'll take your comments. Look, there are a few of you out there that are the old, diehard, old school Pac-12 fans that still hate the Big Ten. I'll hear from you all the time. I know I'm going to hear from you on this one. Hit me up on the comments on YouTube. You're more than welcome to do so. By the way, programming note, there are a couple of late night games coming up on Saturday in the Big Ten. Penn State, 6-0. They're going to be at Wisconsin, Camp Randall. Under the lights, the place is going to be rocking, jumping around. 7:30 NBC Peacock, 7:30 Eastern Time, 4:30 Pacific. And then on the Big Ten Network at the same time, the good old rivalry, Michigan State, Michigan. And I know Michigan State's chomping at the bit. They think Michigan's down. Michigan State's still trying to figure things out. Got a nice win last weekend. That is also a 7:30 Big Ten Network game. So those games are going to be going on at the same time. We always do our live broadcasts after key games. Sometimes they're late afternoon, early evening. Sometimes they're really late at night. We'll go late at night this Saturday. Mark your calendar. Both the Penn State at Wisconsin and the Michigan State-Michigan game should be ending at about the same time, right around 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific. We'll go live here on our Locked On Big Ten YouTube channel. We've been having a lot of success with that. You guys seem to really enjoy that. I really enjoy it. Your live comments, my immediate reaction. We do that on Saturdays. So it'll be live, again, probably around 11 o'clock Eastern time. So you can check that out. Mark your calendar. We're looking forward to all of that. All right. Don't forget to hit our website, talkbig10.com. All of our podcasts go there. And you can buy merchandise from your favorite Big Ten school right there as well for your convenience. Again, that is at talkbig10.com. Also, I want to tell you that, or ask you if you could subscribe. It would really help us out. If you don't mind hitting that little subscribe button real quick. And that's it. No other information required. It's free forever. And then you and I are in the same loop for all things Big Ten moving forward. wherever you get your podcasts. You'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. We have an audio version and the video version on YouTube as well. All right. Indiana, 7-0. They got some pretty big aspirations all of a sudden, getting a lot of attention. The starting quarterback is out. He's hurt. For how long and what is the plan moving forward for the Indiana Hoosiers? We'll talk about that, plus Tuesday tweets. And will Michigan go with a fourth starting quarterback? All that coming up right here on Locked On Big Ten. All right, folks, it is time for our Roy Player of the Week. This week, we're going to show some love to UCLA quarterback Ethan Garbers. Against Rutgers, was responsible for 5 touchdowns, 383 yards. UCLA gets its first win, Big Ten win of the season. Thought about maybe Nick Marsh, the receiver for Michigan State, or even kicker Jonathan Kim, who had 6 field goals in that game. But we'll go with Ethan Garbers this week for our Roy Player of the Week. Roy, the ultimate platform where you get to directly support your favorite athletes. Download Roy on iOS or Google Play, and no middleman. No collective making decisions for you. You decide who gets the financial backing. It's as easy as just a few clicks. The best part is with Roy, you know exactly where your money is going. Roy gives you the power to decide who gets your financial support. Time to put your money where your mouth is. Every contribution from fans like all of us helps keep athletes committed to your favorite school. And if they decide to transfer, you get your money back. How's that for transparency? So what are you waiting for? Download the Roy app today and make your contribution. Not only are you supporting the athlete's journey, but you're also helping to keep your team strong for the next season. Remember, if they stay, you win. If they leave, no worries, you get your cash back. That wraps up our Roy Player of the Week segment. Don't forget, if you want to support more athletes and be part of their success stories, Roy is the way to go. Keep those contributions coming, and let's change the game. Well, thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day, especially you everydayers out there. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe on YouTube and share and follow and like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And don't forget our website, talkbig10.com, where all of our podcasts and your favorite school merchandise is right there at your fingertips for you to check out. Do a little Christmas shopping early. Actually, not so early. It's coming up. All right. Indiana quarterback Kurtis Rourke. He's out for the Washington game this weekend. He injured his thumb versus Nebraska, hitting a helmet, following through on a throw. Didn't return to the second half. In fact, he was bleeding quite a bit if you watched it on TV. The injury is not a season ender, but his timetable for the return is uncertain at this time. And he's an emerging Heisman candidate, too. He's thrown for over 1,900 yards and 15 touchdowns. Taven Jackson, who was a holdover from the Tom Allen regime, and he came in and he played pretty well in the second half against Nebraska. And he'll get the start this week in front of a sold-out home crowd versus the Huskies. Last week, you remember the Big Noon Kickoff show did their show, Urban Meyer and Company from Bloomington, ahead of the broadcast of the Huskers-Hoosiers game. This week, ESPN Game Day is coming to Bloomington ahead of this game against the Huskies. And of course, that'll include former Hoosiers coach Lee Corso, part of the deal. We'll see. We got a picture and a thought of that on our Tuesday tweets. We'll share with you coming up in just a little bit. Speaking of quarterbacks, how bad is Michigan's quarterback situation? We think it's pretty bad. We've talked about that a lot. They've started 3 starting quarterbacks already this year in Davis Warren, Alex Orji, and Jack Tuttle. Only 2 teams in the entire country have passed for fewer yards than Michigan. You know who they are? Army, Air Force. That's it. Those are the 2 teams. That tells you a lot. Now, I thought 7-year player Jack Tuttle would provide a little bit of relief, but in addition to his turnovers, he's missing a lot of wide open receivers. A lot. So now there's talk with Sharon Moore in his press conference about a 4th quarterback. You may wonder how many they have on the roster. Well, they got 2 more guys. There's highly recruited freshman Jaden Davis. Davis was a 4-star who won back-to-back high school state championships in North Carolina. He threw 86 touchdowns in his final 2 years. Certainly has a lot of talent. Sharon Moore alluded to his thought process in his post-game interview after the Illinois game. He said that he didn't want to go to a fourth starting quarterback, but he didn't exactly shut the door on it either. Got some pros and cons. Look, first of all, kid's probably not ready. If he was, we would have seen him already. But on the other hand, he probably couldn't do much worse than what we're seeing right now with the Michigan offense. Now, the kid could come in and he could play 4 games and still maintain a redshirt season here and not burn a year of eligibility. Well, Michigan's got 5 games left plus some sort of bowl, probably, maybe. So there's 6 games. So it might be a couple more weeks before we would see him. But now you're getting close to some big boy games at the end. You don't want to throw him into the fire there. Then there's a possibility of Jaden Denigal. He's a dual threat quarterback with very little playing experience. And again, if he was game worthy, I think you would have seen him on the field by now with everything that's been going on, but you never know. I don't think Jerome Moore wants to give the illusion that he's just throwing in the towel in the 2024 season, but in the final 4 games, we want to fast forward a little bit, including the bowl game. So the last 3 regular season and then a bowl game. That's when you're going to bring in a kid to not burn a year of eligibility. It would be at undefeated Indiana, hosting Northwestern, and then at Ohio State, and then a possible bowl. A couple of those games are not ideal to be bringing in a new person. I think Jerome Moore will ride out this season and sleep in the bed that he's made with what he's got so far. Probably a lot more Tuttle. I don't know if the other 2 guys, Orji or Warren, will come back. I can't see a true freshman playing his first game or 2 at like Ohio State. I can't. But if they do become bowl eligible, I certainly could see a kid starting a bowl game, getting 4 or 5 weeks of practice, getting a jump on next season, playing in a bowl game. That happens all the time. But even still, Jerome Moore, he's got to find a steady veteran quarterback in the transfer portal, no matter what he likes. No matter what the deal is with these young guys, with these young quarterbacks and a couple of recruits coming in, still got to go out there and get a good, solid veteran from the transfer portal. You're Michigan. You got to do it. So it was a big mistake not to do it this year. Big mistake. All right. Coming up, we're going to look at our Tuesday tweets. We always do this on Tuesdays, hence the name Tuesday Tweets. We always have fun with that guy. A lot of Indiana stuff, man. Man, they are pounding their chest. We'll share that with you. It's all coming up in a minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. FanDuel makes the fun of watching sports even more fun. You like sitting around watching NFL football? Well, if you got a little action on it with FanDuel, it's even more fun. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and a whole lot more on the same page that you place your bets. You get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Looking ahead, Thursday Night Football. We got Vikings at Rams. Vikings coming off a tough loss, their first loss of the season to Detroit. The Rams, kind of a dumpster fire themselves there with all the injuries they've had. Minnesota's a 3-point favorite on the road. The Rams have struggled so much. I think the Vikings bounce back and get a win on the short week. But what I do really like is the over at 46.5 in that one. You can do that or your own bets at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook at FanDuel. All right, it's time now for our Tuesday tweets. If you are new, we're getting a lot of new people checking us out all the time. We always have a feature, a benchmark feature at the end of the program each and every day. Monday, we do my top 10 Big Ten observations from the weekend. Give a lot of shout outs to some players and teams that did well. On Tuesday, we do Tuesday tweets. You can follow us on Twitter or X at Talk Big Ten. You tweet something out there, I like it, I'm going to put it here on the program. Wednesday, tomorrow, we'll have our power rankings in the Big Ten. We're going to shake some things up a little bit in there. We do that every Wednesday, the standings as I see them. Thursday, we look at the weekend, Big Ten Classics, the classic games that they air from yesteryear. We give you the schedule, some highlight things that we look at, and then live action. We let you know when all the games are. And then Friday, we close it out with Pigskin Picks. We always do those features at the end of the podcast each and every day. And we're going to do it right now with our Tuesday tweets. I'm going to put it on full screen so you can check it out. If you're audio only, I'll try and describe these as best I can and let you know what's on screen. This is Dan Lanning, the head coach of Oregon after a win, crowd around him. He's got his finger in the air, number one, and that's what they are. They're number one. This is from at College Football Report. Oregon is ranked number one for the first time in the college football playoff era, and it only took Dan Lanning 3 seasons to get there. Actually, less, right? Here we go. At Jeff Rabjohns, he covers a lot of Indiana stuff. It's a montage of Indiana players and some looks like a Washington player getting ready to take on Washington. Curt Cignetti said tremendous times for Indiana football. IU is 7-0. They just crushed Nebraska 56-7 in front of the 4th largest crowd in program history, and they will host Fox. Well, is it consecutive weeks? Okay, I got you. So Fox Big Noon kickoff last week, ESPN Game Day in consecutive weeks. It was a little confusing how that was written, but I got it. I finally caught up. And here it is simplified at Indiana football, putting out the screen picture of College Game Day from ESPN and the crew. They're coming to Bloomington, coming to you live from Bloomington this weekend. I don't think they've ever done that in Bloomington before. Meanwhile, here is the CBS Sports College Football graphic for the AP poll for Week 9 that came out on Sunday, just so you can look at it. Oregon at number 1, Georgia 2, Penn State and Ohio State 3 and 4, coming off the bye, and Texas at 5. They were 1. So 3 of the top 5 teams, Big Ten teams. All right. And then there's Indiana at number 13. I really thought Indiana should have cracked the top 10. But I guess the question is who you're going to remove out of there that's ahead of them. Notre Dame, perhaps. Notice that we are in a day and age where Indiana football is ranked ahead of Texas A&M and Alabama, 14-15. Indiana ranked ahead of Alabama. I'll make a big deal about that. At number 20, you got Illinois as well. And just to show you how crazy the rankings are, look at the last 3. Army, Navy, Vanderbilt. Top 25 teams in college football. Well-deserved, but it's insane. It's crazy. And Antifaldo, USC left the Big Ten thinking they'd be like Michigan and Ohio State. I'm sorry, they left for the Big Ten thinking they'd be like Michigan and Ohio State, and it turns out they're just like Beach Purdue. Here's another one from at Carter Bonds. USC killed an entire conference, the Pac-12, to lose on the road at Maryland and Minnesota after joining the Big Ten. Here is one from at U of M coverage. Picture of Michigan football. Michigan is unranked in the AP poll for the first time since September 2021. Yeah, they fell out after the loss to Illinois. Here's another one on Michigan at College Football Report. Michigan quarterbacks this season. And here's a picture of them all standing side by side. 3 passing touchdowns all season combined. 9 interceptions, 3 fumbles. And that going from a first-round quarterback last year to this. That's a reference to J.J. McCarthy. Here's from at JJ 1 of 1. This is a picture of Dave Portnoy from Barstool. And he says, to all Michigan fans, I'm working on it. What he's working on, in case you haven't heard, he has offered, it started at $1 million. He's now offering $3 million to give to Michigan, to give to an elite quarterback through name, image, and likeness. He will do it. He says he's working on it. I don't know if they're taking his calls or not, but $3 million and an ace quarterback might want to pick up the phone. UCLA football. Ethan Garbers was on another level this weekend. Best completion percentage by a Bruin since 2018. Second quarterback in UCLA history to complete 30 or more passes for an 80% or higher completion percentage. Career best in passing yards and touchdowns, and career long run 49 yards, and career long pass at 67 yards. Hashtag Go Bruins. Threw for 383 yards, counted for 5 touchdowns. Their first Big Ten win, getting it against Rutgers. Here's from at the Big Ten. has Oregon and Indiana as elite. Good. Michigan State, Maryland, Illinois, and Wisconsin. Mid-level, UCLA, Southern Cal, and Iowa. Got Rutgers and Michigan in the bad category, and in the trash category, they put Purdue, Nebraska, and Northwestern. I would not call Northwestern trash. They just had a bad weekend this weekend. They've won 5 games this year. Here's from at Big Ten Football. It is just a highlight of the 5 Big Ten teams that are in the top 25. Actually, the top 20, if you want to be specific. Oregon 1, Penn State 3, Ohio State 4, Indiana 13, Illinois 20. All right, here's a picture of Lee Corso back in the day when he was the head coach of Indiana a long time ago with his players around him. Of course, he's now part of the game day crew on ESPN. It's coming to Bloomington this week. And as you know, Lee Corso's role on that show is basically to grab the mascot head of the team he is predicting that will win the game. Well, Indiana didn't really have a walking around mascot. I mean, what is a Hoosier, right? So it says with no obvious headgear for Lee Corso to wear to pick Indiana, if he does that next week, I vote that he should just put on his sweater over his suit from the olden days. That's from at Seth Towle. Yeah, it's a good idea. I like that. Unless he's going to pick a Husky. Here's a picture of just a huge muscular pack of cigarettes with a mean face. Husking some corn. Indiana beat Nebraska. And, of course, if you don't get the cigarette reference, Curt Cignetti, the head coach, they call him Coach Sig. So here it is. By the way, that was sent out from, at not Trey Galloway. Trey Galloway, of course, a basketball player on the Hoosier basketball team. 7-0, hashtag IU football. Very good. Here's an overhead shot of Memorial Stadium. Full. They had a sellout against Nebraska. They're sold out the rest of the season, which hadn't really happened much at all at Indiana. At College Football Kings, Indiana is ranked higher than Alabama right now. And then it says in football. Yeah, pretty good. A lot of good ones. Those are our Tuesday tweets. Thanks for sending them out there. And a few of them I had to find. If you have a good one, send it to me at Twitter X at Talk Big Ten. Be glad to put it on every Tuesday for you right here. In the meantime, in addition to Twitter, you can also reach out, comments on YouTube, whether it's to me or to other people commenting. Somebody says something about your favorite school, you can come back at them. It's all fun. Keep it clean, but it's all good. Love the back and forth with the comments on YouTube. And don't forget our website, talkbig10.com, where all of our podcasts are. In fact, if you missed yesterday's or Saturdays, go back and check it out. Maybe Friday, going to the weekend. We cover all the teams all the time. Just go there and find them and go check them out for a second listen. We always appreciate that as well. So that'll do it. We're in the middle of the week. We got our power rankings coming out tomorrow. We'll start turning the page from last week, week 8 to week 9, coming up this weekend with a big slate of games. All that is coming up. Before you go, be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. That'll do it. Love the visit as always, and I can't wait to talk to you again tomorrow. Spread the word. Tell your friends we're out here. For Locked On Big Ten, I'm Craig Sheeman.